The Saudi-led bloc backs down on its demands on Qatar as Turkish President Erdogan heads to the Middle East in search of compromise. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Ali Mustafa and this is Straight Talk. It's been nearly 2 months since Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt laid a diplomatic and economic siege on Qatar. But now an opening may be in sight after the Saudi-led bloc softened its stance on Doha. It came just days before Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit to the Middle East to try to find a solution to the crisis. The crisis started in June after Qatar's national news service was allegedly hacked by the UAE. It involved fake news of Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim, condemning the GCC's anti-Iran stance. Turkey has played a critical role in supporting its besieged allies in Doha, and this role is set to expand, as Ahmed Al-Burai reports from Ankara.
Turkey is slowly finding itself at the center of a diplomatic crisis that has engulfed the Middle East since June. Ankara's official position has been to side with Qatar, but as the dispute enters its 8th week, it's unclear how this will end. The Saudi-led coalition had initially wanted Qatar to meet certain conditions, but now the Saudis seem to be backing down. According to reports, the Saudi-led bloc has modified its original 13 demands to 6 broad principles. These include combating terrorism, cracking down on terror financing, and for Qatar to refrain from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. One earlier demand was for Qatar to close down a Turkish military base. But that demand is no longer on the table, according to reports. Amid all the back forth, Turkey is now taking a leading role in trying to end the crisis. It will see Turkish President Erdogan mediate between Saudi Arabia and Qatar during a trip to the Middle East.
Turkey just wants to give a message to that world. Stop that fight.
Turkey's opposition parties say Ankara needs to remain neutral.
It was not prudent, a smart move to take sides militarily in the height of this crisis.
With Saudi Arabia and the UAE showing signs of compromise, there may now be new hope that the end is near for one of the worst diplomatic rifts to hit the Middle East. Ahmed Al-Burai, Straight Talk, Ankara.
And joining me now from London is Wadah Khanfar. He is the founder of the Sharq Forum and the former Director General of Al Jazeera. Wadah, thank you for joining us from London. Now, it's been 2 months since the Qatar crisis started. How did we get here, and what are the roots of this diplomatic rift in the Gulf?
I think a region like ours has been going through transformation during the last few years, especially after the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was an earthquake strategically in the region. Some countries who have not gone through this experience have decided to fight back. So they sponsored counter-revolutions in Egypt, in Libya, in Yemen, and in many other places in the region. And the idea was that if you fight against the Arab Spring, you save your position, you save your monarchies and your regimes. The rich countries, in this case the Saudis and the Emiratis, of course, have been spending generously against the Arab Spring, and they have sponsored a lot of coups. I mean, the Egyptian coup, of course, Sisi 2013, then Haftar in Libya, and of course in Yemen. So the situation is a direct investment against the Arab Spring. Since Trump has arrived to power, they felt that the golden moment has arrived as well. Therefore, they can settle all the account of the Arab Spring. Qatar is not a democracy, but Qatar has never fought against the Arab Spring. And they wanted Qatar to join them in this crusade.
Wadah, tell us the role Turkey has played throughout this crisis and how it has changed the calculus of all the players involved.
The geopolitical map of the region during the last few years has been very confusing for one major reason. I think the clash between the two major regional actors, Turkey and Iran, has been taking place in Syria and in Iraq for the last few years. And of course, that created as well much worse ramifications, which is the sectarian language, which we have heard during the last few years. And of course, Saudis as well, on the other hand, they have been fighting in a way or another a proxy war against the Iranians, that the Iranians are doing the same, especially in Yemen. So the complication in the region has led to a situation where there is no architecture, a regional architecture that could create some stability in the region. Now, after this situation that we have seen, I can talk about one clear axis that has been formed. Block of states, Saudis, Emiratis, the Bahrainis, and the Egyptians have formed a block, an axis. So this block has been officially now launched through this kind of initiative against Qatar. But on the other hand, the other block, which is supposed to be counterbalancing this, has never been born. So my prediction would be that a country like Iran and Turkey, although they disagree on Egypt and on Syria, but they agree that not a single actor should reshape the Middle East. And therefore, they have taken a position against the escalation of these countries against Qatar. So, in my opinion, a new dynamics is going to emerge in the next few months, where the other actors, especially the Turks and the Iranians, will start talking to each other and try to find a solution, especially in Syria, which has become very complicated and dangerous. And I do feel that both parties, if they do not sit together and find a solution on Syria, they are actually losing the initiative, because the Russians have their own agenda now, which is not necessarily in line with the Iranian agenda.
But Wadah, hold on a sec. Could it not be too early to say that Turkey and Iran could enter into an alliance despite resistance on both sides?
It could be too early. If you think so, that might be true. Some people do believe that, the psychological gap as well has grown too far because of the sectarian language in the region, because of a lot of problems. But I argue that there are national interest issues for both countries that maybe make them come together. One of them is the Kurds, for example. Two countries have declared officially they are not favoring a separation of the Kurdish territories in Iraq, independence, and also in North Syria. So this is one issue that they might come up together in order to start resolving. The other issue is actually about the future of Syria, as I said. Both of them are losing initiatives in Syria.
Wadah Khanfar, thank you for joining us from London.
Thank you very much.
Still to come on Strait Talk. Turkish troops battle the YPG in Syria. We look at why the group is one of the deadliest threats facing Turkey. And the search for justice in a state of emergency. We look at Turkey's post-coup detentions and arrests. Turkish-backed forces have hit back at YPG fighters in northern Syria. This latest escalation is slowly growing into a major security challenge for Ankara. The YPG is a Syrian offshoot of a terror group that has killed tens of thousands of people in Turkey. We're talking about the PKK, of course. That group continues to wage war against Turkish soldiers in the southeast of the country. But with the rise of the YPG in Syria, a new, more enduring challenge awaits Ankara. Turkey's National Security Council says it has evidence of US-supplied weapons to the YPG ending up in the hands of PKK terrorists. Aisha Jamal explains the links between the PKK and YPG.
Linked to the PYD, a Kurdish group in northern Syria, the YPG was formed in 2004 as its armed military wing. But why does Turkey consider the YPG a terrorist group? The YPG is a Syrian offshoot of the outlawed PKK, which has been fighting the Turkish state since the 1970s. Turkey says the PKK and its affiliates masterminded several deadly attacks that have killed hundreds of people across the country in recent years. And it's not just Turkey who holds this view. The US, EU, and NATO have also labeled the PKK a terrorist group. The YPG's gains in Syria have given the PKK a considerable operational advantage, and according to Turkey, a new base of operations from which to launch attacks. The YPG's own objective, though, is to carve out an independent state in northern Syria, which it calls Rojava. This ambition of Kurdish state overlaps with the PKK's aim of an autonomous Kurdish region that would include parts of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Even fighters from these groups say they're all the same. For example, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, a PKK militant said, "Sometimes I'm a PKK, sometimes I'm a PJAK, sometimes I'm a YPG. It doesn't really matter. They're all members of the PKK." Both groups also consider this man to be their leader. Abdullah Öcalan is accused of orchestrating a campaign of terror in Turkey, which has lasted for decades. Despite evidence linking the YPG to the PKK, the US and the EU still consider the two as separate groups. In recent years, the YPG has made significant gains in northern Syria, and rights groups accuse the YPG of ethnically cleansing Arab towns and cities. But the US sees things differently. It considers the YPG to be an essential partner in the fight against Daesh in Syria. And it gets even more complicated. The YPG is now part of an umbrella group known as the SDF, which has around 50,000 fighters, including child soldiers, the bulk of which are from the YPG. By supporting the YPG-dominated SDF, the US is going against its own NATO ally, Turkey. For Ankara, pitting a terrorist organization, the YPG, against another terrorist organization, Daesh, poses a major risk. There is evidence that US weapons supplied to the YPG have ended up in the hands of the PKK terror group and have been used in terrorist attacks inside Turkey. The conflict with the PKK has already cost Turkey over 40,000 lives. With all this evidence, is the YPG a terrorist group? You decide.
And joining me now from Washington is former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt. General Kimmitt, thank you for joining us. Let's get straight to it. Why is the US supporting a group which NATO ally Turkey considers to be a terrorist organization?
Well, first of all, let's focus on the task at hand. The task at hand is the defeat of ISIS. Both of our countries recognize what a threat ISIS is. We've seen it happen with explosions at the airport in Istanbul. We've seen it with lone wolf attacks here in the United States. So while the government of Turkey sees a direct link between the PKK and the YPG, it is not as clear to the 70 nations within the coalition to fight ISIS. We find them to be good fighters. Let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. May I finish, please? We see them as very good fighters. They're inside Raqqa now. Both Turkey and the United States and the coalition nations have a mission, and that is to defeat ISIS, and that mission is going well.
General Kimmitt, we've seen Russia, the US, of course, has been focusing on the fight against ISIS, but we see Russia taking an active position in consolidating Bashar al-Assad's hold in areas under his control. We've seen Turkey, of course, move into Jarablus in northern Syria after the YPG threat became imminent for them. We've also seen Iran push through its agenda. Has the US in some way, in your opinion, lost out?
Oh, I don't think it's lost out, but it's very clear that other actors inside of Syria are playing a very significant role. Some of that in the interest of the coalition, in the interest of NATO, in the interest of Turkey, and others that are working against our interests. So whether it's Russia in Syria, whether it's Iran in Syria, or whether it's other forces inside of Syria, as I said, we've got to figure out what a post-war Syria is going to look like. And it's not simply one of what happens inside of Syria, but there's also the question, as you noted, of who are going to be the external actors that have the most influence in bringing, as you would say, a modern Syria into the future.
General Kimmitt, recently we've seen condemnation from the US against the Turkish state news agency in releasing location of U.S. military personnel in northern Syria. What's the reaction that you're getting from the U.S.?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's condemnation. I think it's quite a large amount of disappointment. Turkey is an ally of the United States. They understand the implications of where these sites are. They understand the increased danger that U.S. and coalition soldiers are now that these sites have been revealed. Again, like all of these issues that we have with the Turkish government, none of them are irreparable. We will work our way through them. But I would say, to answer your question directly, there's a great sense of disappointment here that an ally would do that to another ally.
How do you see this relationship then, if there is such a level of miscommunication between these two allies, these essential NATO allies? How do you think they can get over this and mend ties?
Well, between you and me, this is very much like a marriage. We've been married in the NATO alliance for many, many years. That doesn't mean it's always a perfect marriage. There are arguments, there are disputes. Sometimes cups are thrown, but I believe in the long run we'll recognize that Turkey, the United States, and the NATO alliance have a very strong relationship, a very strong marriage, and we're going to get over this.
General Mark Kimmett, former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs in the U.S., joining us from Washington. Thank you again. In the past year since the failed coup, the Turkish government has arrested and detained more than 50,000 people. They make up just under a third of the 170,000 civil servants who were removed from their positions after the coup, suspected of being members of the Fethullah terrorist network. But not all suspects were guilty. Tens of thousands have been reinstated since. All this happened during a state of emergency that was extended for another 3 months. Ömer Kablan has more.
Bir taraftan PKK, bir taraftan FETÖ, bir taraftan DAEŞ, bir taraftan PYD, bir taraftan YPG, topunuz gelin.
A dare with big unintended consequences. In trying to find the enemies of the state, Turkey has had to make some tough decisions. I went to the Fatih district of Istanbul to meet a public prosecutor. Yasin Shamlı is also representing families who've lost their loved ones in last year's failed coup. He says not all victims of the post-coup arrests are guilty of crimes they're accused of.
Olayın vehametine baktığınız zaman, olayın büyüklüğüne baktığınız zaman arada bazı yanlışların olması mümkün gözüküyor. Ama bunların hepsi dediğim gibi kurumları tarafından, itiraz mercileri tarafından incelenip eğer varsa bir mağduriyet bunların giderilmesi mümkün. Adalet bir hakkı ait olduğu yere koymak demektir.
Since 2016, almost 170,000 public servants have been investigated for links to terrorist groups. Of these, 50,000 terrorist suspects are behind bars, but now 35,000 have been cleared of all charges and reinstated to their previous positions. I also asked Yasin how the Turkish judiciary has responded to the arrests of suspects and how the judicial process is working in the state of emergency.
Türkiye'de hukuk sistemi üzerinde baskının olduğunu söylemek çok yanlış ve ileri bir iddia. Savunma hakkı kısıtlanıyor denilemez. Gene sanıklara iddianameler tebliğ ediliyor, onların okumaları temin ediliyor, savunma hakkı veriliyor, delilleri ni ibraz etme hakkı, mahkemede özgürce kendisini savunma hakları veriliyor. Bu anlamda bir kısıtlama yok.
Victims of the coup say that investigations against these individuals should continue, but accountability is essential, and the process of finding someone innocent is as important as finding someone guilty. Despite the challenges Turkey is facing, the government insists that the courts are independent and able to fulfill their duties without interference. Ömer Kablan, Straight Talk.
And for more on this, I'm joined by Talib Küçükcan, who is a member of parliament from the ruling AK Party from Ankara. Talib, good to have you on the show. As we saw in Ömer's report, with these reinstatements, why do you think some officials were wrongfully accused in the post-coup arrests and detentions?
Well, first of all, let me underline the fact that the state of emergency and the measures in Turkey were taken in order to protect Turkish democracy and constitutional institutions. You know, in Turkey, we had existential threats. There is a terrorism on the one hand, and also there was a coup plot in Turkey. And of course, it is, as I say, the responsibility of the state to take some measures for the prevention of constitutional rights of the people. And of course, during that time, thousands of people were dismissed from their duties, and also they were suspended. A number of institutions were closed down.
Talib, you mentioned the state of emergency, which has been consecutively renewed since the coup. What would you say to critics who argue that it's very difficult for the judiciary to be independent during a state of emergency?
Well, remember that Turkey had to dismiss more than 3,000 judges and prosecutors. And in order to fill the gap in that critical time, the Turkish state decided to declare emergency law, the state of emergency. This is a constitutional instrument, first of all, and no one can deny that under these circumstances the law will be lifted, the law will not be functioning. But what happens under the state of emergency law is that the people who were not happy with the decisions of the decrees, they are not able to go to the courts. They cannot appeal to the courts. This is something that might be criticized, but what happens now that Turkish parliament, Turkish government decided to establish an inquiry commission to look at the measures taken by the decree laws. And now it is a time to provide an internal remedy, legal remedy, for those who would like to object to these decisions. In January of this year, that inquiry commission was established with 7 leading members and more than 200 staff that will support the applications.
But hold on, Talib, this new commission that you're talking about that was set up in January, is this the result of some mistakes that were made by the authorities after the coup?
Well, it is not a matter of mistake, but as I said, during the military coup attempt, and even before that, there were many people who were under investigation, and there were many people who were involved in the coup attempt. And the state, the government, had to take bold decisions in order to protect the lives of people here and the public order. And there was a dust in the air at that stage. And now it is time we say the dust is cleared. Now let's look at all the issues more clearly, more objectively, and more in a more patient way. And all the details will come on the table. All the debates will be taken fairly. I think, as I said, this is the way that the rule of law is working.
Thank you for answering our questions, Talib. Always a pleasure. Talib Küçükcan, Member of Parliament from the ruling AK Party, joining us from Ankara.
İsmim Ertan Ercantan. 1942 doğumluyum. Esas doğum yerim Minareli-Köy'dür. Bir kızım, bir oğlum var, 4 torunum var. 1961'de liseyi bitirdim, buraya geldim, 55 yılımı doldurdum. Mesleğimiz ticaret, işte burada efendim kumaş ticareti yapıyoruz. Benim çocukluğumuzda o zaman tabii işte Kıbrıs hükümeti, İngiliz devrini geçirdik. Ondan sonra Kıbrıs Cumhuriyeti oldu. Biz o günleri yaşadık. Yaşım 75. Biz Minareli-Köy'de doğup büyüdük. Aynı köyde yaşıyorsun ya. Reçberlik ediyorsun, ne bileyim, esnaflık ediyorsun. Onların bakkallarına gelir alışveriş ederdik. Hatta onların berberlerine gelirdik. 1960'da daha yeni başladı yakınlaşma. Hatta Ermeniler vardı o zaman. Bizde Türk tüccarları o zaman çok azdı, sayılıydı. Esnaflar giderler Ermenilerden ve Rumların büyük tüccarlardan alırdı malları. 1974'te biraz önce dediğim gibi darbe oldu. Samson darbe yaptı Papaz'a, Makaryos'a. Ve biz Kıbrıs Türk'ü olarak şimdi dedik Türkiye için tam bir fırsat doğdu dedik. 20 Temmuz sabahı Bir cumartesiydi galiba. Adaya denktaş ve rağbetlik radyodan beyanat verdi. Dedi şu anda dedi, kahraman Türk ordusu dedi. Adaya her yandan çıkarma yapmaktadır dedi. Oğlum ancak da kavrayabildi. Çocuk 5 yaşında işte ama kızım da annesinin karnındaydı. Hamileydi daha. Şükür Allah'ımıza dedik. Türkiye'miz geliyor. Bizi bu karanlık günlerden kurtaracak dedik. Her ne kadar da biz Rumlardan biraz nüfus olarak daha az isek de onlar bize yine bir şey vermiyor. İki tarafın birbirine güvenmesi lazım. Aksi takdirde bu böyle sürüp gidecek yıllarla biz de boşu boşuna debelenip gideceğiz. Aman bitti bitecek. Bu son görüşmedir. Bir de bakarsın ne oldu sonunda? Dağ fare doğurdu. Hiçbir şey yok.
Next time on Strait Talk, a crime against humanity. That's what Turkey has called Israel's two-day closure of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied East Jerusalem. Next week, we look at rising tensions in the Holy Land. But I leave you now with these final thoughts. The crisis in the Gulf today is being played out at two levels. On the face of it, it's about Qatar being punished for wanting an independent foreign policy different from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But if you look deeper, the crisis is also about a generational struggle. It's between an insecure old guard stuck to the status quo and a younger generation that wants more rights. The question Ankara is asking is, should Qatar be punished for supporting the call for democracy in the region? And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ali Mustafa. Until next time, hoşça kalın and goodbye.